Byron Coley.
Hello. I'm going to read a record review tonight. I have this little preface for it. In December 2003, Thurston and I were invited to go down to do a McSweeney's reading at the old North Six in Williamsburg. And so it was supposed to be about rock writing or something like that. I can't really remember. So we picked a few record reviews and stuff like that we were gonna read, and we also made up a little book of Bowie, making fun of David Bowie sort of. And so we're getting ready to go down there, and this was December 5th, 2003, and it really started snowing. It was snowing like crazy. And as the day went along and along, we were thinking oh, maybe it's not going to happen. So then Thurston called up the place, and they were like, oh no, it's still on. So we were like, oh, okay, we'll go. So we got into his car to drive down there, and it was I mean, there was nobody on the road. It was really snowing. We got down into the Merritt Parkway, and we were the only car on there. At one point we were driving along, and we see these lights, like a car sort of lights coming through the woods towards us. We're sort of looking over there going well, what the fuck is that? And then all of a sudden it comes up, and it's two snowmobiles and they drive onto the Merritt, and they go down to the next gas station just to gas up. Anyways, we get down to Brooklyn, and it's really kind of snowed in. But we go and we do the reading, and then we just turned around and drove back, and it was pretty good. Who else? Jonathan. What's that guy's name? McSweeney's guy. He wrote some stuff. Anyway, there was some really good reading. Anyway, but this is one of the things I read. It's a review of Crosby, Stills, Nash, Young, Taylor, and Reeves' Deja Vu album, written by J.R. Young, and it was published in Rolling Stone. Jonathan Ames, you're right, Alan. Jonathan Ames did a really good thing about masturbating by going like this with his hand. Just it was quite excellent. J.R. Young and Rolling Stone from April 30th, 1970. And for people who don't really remember the spring of 1970, it's worth noting that indeed people were waiting for Deja Vu for a very long time. It kept on getting pushed back, and people had been very fond of that first Crosby, Stills, Nash record, and so they were ready for it it was a hot turd. And anyway, this is the review by J.R. Young. The record business hadn't been good lately. Some said it was a recession, others said suppression, while others said mere direction. But whatever the reason, the plasticware wasn't moving through stores. Records hadn't been turning anybody on in recent weeks, and many thought that was bad. The capitalists, with the hip facades throughout the supposed counterculture, all shook their furry little heads like crazy over the weeklies. Because not only wasn't there anything strong on the racks, there wasn't anything on the way, except perhaps the long-awaited Deja Vu. They'd been hearing about it for months. Dave worked at the counter of one such establishment, and he made a change all day. His boss was one of the hip capitalists, a stone businessman, and thus it was with more than mere interest that Dave watched him look the rack up and down at the end of the day, grimace, and finally bolt from the store, snorting over the lack of integrity, the failing hypes, the excessive delays, but more than anything, the real lack of good new releases and guaranteed sales. In short, moolah. Dave watched the scene enacted daily, and each day muttered something about assholishness as the boss jumped into his GTO and shot out of view. Dave liked his job, however, because here it seemed correct to come to work stoned, hipper than thou, together, or as they said on the radio every 8 minutes, from Eugene, getting it right on. Dave was a very serious lad, and into a much heavier stint than that of a mere desk clerk, for he fancied himself a bomb maker in the coming revolution. Bombs now only in the blueprint stage. But what blueprints? They were so large and meticulously drawn, and so thoroughly, that they covered 3 walls of the bedroom. He stood and admired the blue-papered walls each night before taking his old lady to bed. His old lady was something else, too, because her scene, as she so candidly admitted, was a mixed bag. Anything from politico-revolutionary theater to blue ribbon winner at the Lane County Fair for her apricot conserve. She said sorry about that more than 3 times a day and talked on endlessly about good karma. Clipper, the cat who lived next door to them, thought her act was nowhere privately, although he still would have loved to bawl her. He was an older cat and presumed he was terrifically sexual and was into all kinds of vills, such as, "I'm in Turned-Onsville," or "He's from Hostelesville." He had a freaky girlfriend who always wore a peasant blouse and jiggled her tits on purpose. "Nipplesville," Clipper often laughed as he made a grab for the big ones. They were all heavy record freaks and well into dope, always dropping pure Owsley and tripping at the beach, stashing joints, things like that, and always to the big beat of the sounds that Dave brought home from the record store. Music and dope went hand in hand in their households, whether fucking in the shower, eating dinner, talking revolution, reading Mao, answering the door, whatever. They were all whacked. Even during his most serious moments, such as when he was working out complicated detonator on paper, Dave still had half a joint, just to keep my thing together. Yes, the new life was a good alternative. One day a very strange dude moved into the complex. He had red, bushy hair and never smiled, didn't talk much, kept to himself and read thick books, and apparently wrote a lot, too. About what was a mystery. He brought only 1 suitcase, a pillow, a blanket, and an ancient army cot. He ate little, too. "Music, man. He doesn't seem to listen to the music. Isn't that far out?" Dave's old lady exclaimed. And she rolled her crazy red eyes back in her head as the other 3 passed the joint. "Yeah," Dave said, inhaling quickly. "Weird. And probably no dope, man. Probably no dope. Weird, man, you know what I mean?" They all knew. As time passed, however, the strange dude, one Jordan Rover, began making inroads upon their heads with his consistent demeanor of general togetherness, a clean brand of intense calm, his eyes flickering just slightly at the mention of People's Park or the slamming of a car door. Thus it was that following a macrobiotic meal in Dave's place one night, they all sat around the living room as Dave filled the bamboo pipe. Jordan sat alone in the corner. It had been his first meal with the 4, and he seemed a bit ill at ease at the dope development. When the pipe was handed to him, he merely kept it moving without taking the customary hit. The 4 friends all exchanged secret and knowing glances. "Not tonight, huh, Jordan?" Dave asked as the pipe went around for the 2nd time. "Not tonight. Fucks my head around a little bit too much. Can't smoke it anymore. I used to really dig it, too. Same with music, man. Dangerous stuff." He nodded at them. Dave's old lady, her lids heavy, leaned forward. "No music? No dope? Man, where is that?" Jordan Rover didn't react, but only met her thick eyes with his clear eyes until she had to look away. They all looked away. Then he did speak, glancing around the apartment. "I'll tell you where it's at, because it's not where those blueprints are that you showed me earlier, if you know what I mean. My question is, where are you people?" Dave stiffened. "What about the blueprints?" he asked. "They're posters, man. Just like Jane Fonda and Elvis Presley and the Marx Brothers. Can you dig that?" "No, man, what the fuck are you talking about?" "They're plans, then," Jordan shrugged. "For you. But nothing more. Always planning, always waiting." "Wait a minute, man. So they are plans. Right on, right?" "But it's a game. It's all a game. The dope's a game. The music's a game. Your fucking revolution is a game. You're all really into this other shit, man, and it has you locked in this room. It's all too comfortable for you to leave. You're crazy, man, Dave said, shaking his head. He's crazy, right? And Dave turned to look for help, but the other heads were fogged. You think I'm crazy when what it really comes down to is your ultimate concern is, this month, where the fuck is Deja Vu? I've been hearing that rap ever since I moved in, and you can still say I'm crazy? What a waste, man. Deja Vu. Now, wait a minute. Dave held up his hands, blinking his eyes. Wait a minute. A long pause ensued, broken only by the rustle of Clipper's hand up his chick's blouse. You know what I think, man, Jordan Rover finally said as he looked around them. I think that if you're ever going to get it together about the change, man, like real change, then you'll be hoping that Deja Vu will be shit. No good. Because it's close this time. What are you talking about? What's close? You're crazy. Crazy? Then try this. There's a lot of energy in the air, and people are getting uptight. The market is slow, bad records, and there is no release. Nothing to buy, right? Right? So dig it. It's energy, man. And it's building. And it's going to have to move somewhere, somehow. And if your Deja Vu suddenly appears and is a trip, well, man, then it's just another energy drain. Abbey Road and Let It Bleed all over again. Another reprieve for them. They've locked you up in here. Atlantic and all those people have you in jail, and you don't even know it. You're the old people in Wild in the Streets. You put on the record, smoke a little dope, draw up a few bombs, and go to bed so you can get up and begin again tomorrow, and it's dumb. Man, it's dumb. Nothing ever changes. Jordan was on his feet, standing over them, waving his arms as he talked on. You folks call yourselves revolutionary, but that's really crazy. You ought to lay off the music, lay off the shit, burn them rock and roll mags, and really get it on. Put your energy in the street, that's where it's at. He nodded slowly at them, signifying his message. That's where it's at. Deja vu isn't the question, it's the problem. And with one final wave, Jordan Rover bowed, thanked his host for the dinner, and split. The remaining four were quiet for a long time. Dave was the first to speak, leaning forward and stubbing out the roach. A righteous cat, man, a righteous cat. He is right on. He grinned at all of them. Right on. That night, some changes were made at Dave's place. 2 nights later, the record shop blew up, taking half the block with it. Can you dig it? Clipper said, still fluffing his chick's tits as the flames shoot up 60 feet across the street from where the four sat watching. A righteous explosion, man, Dave laughed, but exuding a new determined grimness all the same. Right out of the Mantovani section, a righteous explosion. They all stood proudly and watched as the 3-alarm fire became a 4 and stretched on into the early morning. Clipper and his chick left early. Dave and his old lady were almost the last to leave. Oh man, when I heard it, my heart almost burst, so far out. Boom! He threw his head back and roared. His old lady unlocked the door of the apartment and they went in. The place was now nothing more than walls and floor save for the bed. Only essentials remained. So far out, Dave laughed again, and he fell on the bed, his eyes closed, his face aglow in the candlelight. His old lady sat at his side, looking down reverently at her long-haired radical. Did you dig it? He asked, as he slipped a hand up inside her blouse to her warm breasts. I dug it, she said, smiling softly at him. They fell together immediately and bawled. Perhaps 40 minutes later, they lay silent in bed, breathing easily and thinking private thoughts. Private until both were aware of low, throbbing sounds coming from down the hall. Do you hear something? She finally asked. Like music? I sure do, he answered, and they listened some more. Know who it is? She asked. Well, if I'm not mistaken, it's Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. I know Deja Vu came out today. No, silly, I couldn't care less about what the record is. I want to know who's playing it around here. Who else but Clipper? I mean, the cat's crazy. No will. He's at it again. Dave reached for a cigarette. Now, I can't believe that, she said, sitting up. You know him. I'm going to see. And wrapping a blanket around her, she crept to the door. It's coming from there, and I smell dope, too. Dave jumped out of bed. "I think I better go rap with him about this," he said. "After all the shit he was laying on us the other night about how he was going to make it." "Me too," his old lady chipped in. They marched to Clipper's door, and just as Dave was about to knock, he stopped. The sound, strangely enough, was not coming from Clipper's place at all, but from the room next door. Dave and his old lady exchanged quizzical glances and edged that way, unsure of their discovery. But sure enough, it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young on the stereo. Deja vu. Dave slowly cracked open the door, and there, on the floor, on his mattress, in front of a KLH portable, sat Jordan Rover, naked, a fresh lid of grass at his side, and a huge joint hanging from his lips. When he saw Dave and his old lady at the door, he beamed at them, chuckling easily. "Hey man, come on in." He lifted his eyebrows and nodded at them. "Come on in, smoke a little shit, open your ears, sit down." He patted the mattress at his side. "But you said," Dave stammered, pointing at him. "Oh man, sit down," Jordan grimaced jocularly, then smiled. "You've got to hear this. It is so far out." "But what I said, man, I know. What I said, right on." And he thrust a fist feebly into the air. "But you were right. It's an energy." "Yeah, man, it's a drain, a real energy drain, but it feels so good. It feels so fucking good, man." And his head fell back as he turned up the volume and let the music pour into their heads. And he was right. "Gee, it does sound good, doesn't it?" Dave's old lady said, as she blithely dropped the blanket at her feet and sat her pink little body down on the mattress. She went for the joint immediately. It wasn't more than a second later, after a final shrug, that Dave, too, sat down and took the joint in his turn. And it wasn't more than 20 minutes later that Dave, in sweet serenity, was heard to remark to no one in particular, "Neil Young is a heavy, man. Neil Young is a real heavy." Right, that's it. That was a...
Thank you, Byron.
That was J.R. Young's Deja Vu review from Rolling Stone in April, as read at North 6 by either me or Thurston. I can't really remember who read it. In about 17 years ago, next week, I think, something like that. Anyway, from 17 years ago until today, we bring the Bard of Bethel, the Nutmeg King. Let's present. Give it up for Thurston Moore. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Ted and Byron for inviting me to be at this special holiday quarantine. Yeah, I'm in the wilds of Western Connecticut, and yeah, I recall that trip as well. What you didn't mention is when we were traveling through the blizzard, arduous. I mean, it took us about maybe 4 hours to get to Brooklyn. From Northampton, it's it's a couple hours and change maybe. But what we were doing and what we had prepared for that reading is one of our books, and it was the David Bowie book of haiku. And we had all the papers, and we had the saddle stitch stapler. I drove, and Byron constructed 100 copies of this fanzine. And I think we probably sold none of them there, but we had them now, and I think we probably still have them in the New Grass Center for the Creative Arts. I'm going to play a little music, and before I do, I'm going to read a couple of short poems. Very short. They're poems that were written in the 2020 quarantine zone. This first one's called "Not Like Them." Some crazy guy outside and everyone is told to stay in their homes, and I think he may have no home. His voice rises and falls with loss and anger and nasty words, nasty life. It's been raining off and on all day, and it's past midnight, and I hear him yowling down the street. Politics is never pretty. All a strategy for the people, the money that is nothing more than an abstract totem in the unwashed hand of a schizophrenic brain, a mind on the loose. His voice covered by the machine noise of the trash truck. Abolish slavery now, you delirious creeps. The second poem is called An Other World. Does it matter when you're dead if you're male or female? Death is the great transition, the ultimate identity. How lovely to die, as free as the sky, eternal and high, the good of goodbye. Though I can't speak of the living who cry and cry and cry.
Sad one.
Sad but true, baby. This song was written specifically for this evening. It's called Connecticut Heaven.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was very nutmeggy.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Thurston. That was